HIPcast is brought to you by Enterprise Social Record.
Today we are taking a journey, and I am so excited because we're going to look at how things were, how things used to be. And Seth, I think the timing of this is great because we're going to talk about transcription and how transcription used to be, and then, how we do it today is so very different. But I guess I'm thinking the way technology is evolving today and how fast things are turning over and how, quantum computing is almost ready to deliver to mainstream for work, and what that's going to change for us. But you and I've been in this field long enough that we know what the transcription process used to be is so different now. So we are so fortunate to get one of our THIMA members who was talking with Seth the other day, and they were talking about her mom's journey and as a transcriptionist. And Seth said, let's have her on the show. So we're going to talk some history today and how practice used to work. And so I'm going to read a bio, and then we're going to let Bonita introduce herself. But we're going to talk with Bonita Payne and also her mother, Mrs. Dorothy Jean Coulter Payne. She is a retired healthcare professional. Her education consists of 2 years of applied Associate of Arts degree from Mary Holmes Junior College in West Point, Mississippi. Her major was business education with a minor in sociology. She graduated junior college in 1965, and then after graduation, received an opportunity to attend TSU, Tennessee State University, where she studied business education, graduated in 1973 with a bachelor's degree, and her first job was with Vanderbilt Medical Center, where she stayed for 27 years. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Absolutely. And welcome to you, Bonita and Miss Payne. We're excited to have you on here. And Bonita, would you like to give your introduction as well? We want to know about you and welcome both of you here.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Bonita Payne. I'm a registered health information administrator. I have my Associate of Applied Science degree with a concentration in medical office from Nashville State Community College. I have my bachelor's degree in Health Information Management, from Tennessee State University. It also has a minor in general business. I have my master's of health informatics and information management from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, as well as I have a certification or certificate in healthcare administration and planning that came from TSU. And so my last journey is to complete my doctoral degree in health informatics and information management at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. I have been in HIM for at least 25 years plus. I say that it was hereditary as far as me getting into HIM. This came through birth that I was introduced to this field. And so this is where I've landed. I've had opportunities to work in a variety of positions, medical coder, program director at a for-profit institution, so a proprietary, it was an accredited program, HIM, 2-year. Then also TSU, I worked as adjunct faculty and then full-time faculty in the HIM department, which of course I had graduated from the program. So it was really an honor to go back and to give back and to help others achieve what I, set forth to achieve. Lastly, I program director of medical informatics at Columbia State Community College. So that was my last spiel in education, temporarily at a full-time position. I have now transitioned into doing research, like a research assistant. And so I have my own company. It's called Avessentials Consulting, LLC. And I conduct a variety of things, research. Also, I still do teaching. So I do exam prep and things of that nature. So
Well, Bonita and I have served in the THIMA for quite some time, so Bonita always raises her hand and takes care of Middle Tennessee, and unfortunately, she keeps having to raise her hand. So I appreciate you, Bonita, and I always enjoy working with you. But I, this all started. We were on a phone call, and Bonita mentioned having to count lines and whatnot as a kid, and being taught and kind of growing up in health information. And that's not the typical story for a lot of our students and our professionals across the country that listen to this. Most people kind of accidentally find health information. So to have Miss Payne with us and to tell us how that career started is going to be a fascinating story. So, Miss Payne, welcome, and I'd love to learn about how you found transcription and how you ended up having a wonderful career of 27 years.
First of all, I was given the opportunity to come to Nashville, Tennessee through my church, which I was a Presbyterian pastor who referred me to a pastor that lived in Nashville, Tennessee. And that way I could further my education. So when I graduated from the junior college, I came to TSU through, I think the people name were Horace Mann. He was a dentist, and he was also a member of the Presbyterian Church. And so I stayed with him for, I guess, in his home for about a year and attended school as a, you know, living off campus student. And then I went on campus and started my degree. And at the time, when I moved from Dr. Mann's home, I needed, work. And so I was going to school in the daytime. And then I was able to, I think I went through an agency with another person, and the agency referred me to Vanderbilt Medical Center. And from there, well, the only thing I had to do was to do a typing test and a spelling test. And
Well, I would
so,
have failed the spelling test for sure.
so as I was able to type 100 words per minute
Wow.
and spell really well, so that's how I came about getting hired through um, the agency to go to Vanderbilt. And my interviewer at Vanderbilt was Mrs. Land. She was over the medical records department, which is now HIM. They call it HIM, but then it was the medical records department. And so she interviewed me and hired me right away. And after, well, my work was audited for about 2 weeks. And then I was able to transition to be on my own independently. And so I was transcribing medical reports like history and physical,
Hmm.
uh, operative reports, letters, progress notes, and just a variety, admission notes. And we had, at first, when we started, we had cassettes, the cassettes,
Oh, yeah.
all the dictation was on cassettes. And we had linear equipment that we had to use the ear set to listen with a foot pedal.
Oh, my
Mm-hmm.
goodness.
And then we were just getting paid by the hour. So then they had a professional to come in because we were just overloaded with work and we couldn't hardly do all that work. So he made it possible for us to get incentive through typing so many lines, and you get paid a base salary, and then you would get paid incentive. And the incentive came every 2 weeks to the transcriptionist. So we were getting paid every week, whereas most people were getting paid every 2 weeks. And I think the people in the medical records department was kind of jealous of us because we got paid every week. So So then I mastered that, and so I became a certified medical transcriptionist through being grandfathered in because of my years of experience.
Yeah.
And from that point, I think from that point, we had after I got grandfathered in as a medical transcriptionist. I had to maintain CEs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, CE
Hmm.
credits, and I went to seminars and conventions to maintain my certification.
So, what year was it when you started at Nashville or at Vanderbilt?
I started in November 26th of 1967,
Wow.
1967.
And
And
they were
was
and
it
learning to
and
type notes.
I was working at night because I was going to school during the day. So I worked at night for
was it a
oh,
typewriter that you typed on? I
at
assume,
first,
right?
at first it was a typewriter, and then we graduated to a computer.
That's fascinating. I remember when the first HIM department I worked in, we still had the linear dictation system
Oh,
and the
yeah.
foot pedals, but we
Absolutely.
didn't have the tapes at the time. We didn't have the cassettes.
We okay. Well, we had the cassettes at first, and then we graduated to a station that housed all the transcription, and so we
Hmm.
would just plug in to one of the panels and then listen and transcribe on the computer.
Yeah, that's fascinating. When I was when I was working on my associate's degree for health information, we did have the cassettes and the foot pedals and the headphones. But in my first job, where the transcriptionists were, we had that linear station where you just sit there and you just, all of the instead of it being individual cassettes, it's just all in a row, and you just pick the row you're going to work on, and it might be you got to prioritize the H and P's and the op notes and all of those
Yeah, and
digits.
sometimes you'll get a stat, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes you
Oh,
get a
yeah.
absolutely.
stat,
I
and then
remember those though. I remember doing it that way. I'm fascinated by the consultant, the professional who came in and said, well, you can give them a base salary because they've got this average number of lines per day that they're typing, and then you give them this incentive. But by the time that I was, kind of responsible for making sure transcription got done, it was expected that base was you have to do this many lines per day. Like that
Hmm.
straight up, there was nothing about the hourly as much as this is how many lines you do per day. It's basically a per line pay. And I wonder if that was driven largely off of that project with that professional Bonnie or Mrs. Payne.
well, all the while that I was at Vanderbilt, it was strictly incentive and base pay. But when I was working at Vanderbilt and the work was so heavy, I went on to continue working at Vanderbilt in the daytime and bring home the work from Vanderbilt to do at home. And that's where I had to count the lines and put them on a tally sheet and submit them to the outside company that I was working for. I don't remember the name of the company, but submit it to them and to get paid. But see, I was working for Vanderbilt as an employee and working for another company who contracted Vanderbilt's work, and
Well,
I
very
was
good.
at home.
Very good. So in the daytime, you were a transcriptionist at Vanderbilt proper, and in the evening, you were moonlighting as a consultant or as a contractor, essentially, to Vanderbilt to continue.
Right.
Well, that kind of leads us into thinking. I'm guessing, Bonita, that's how you were exposed to transcription and health information. Tell us that. Tell us the about your growing up learning about transcription and health information.
Sure. So, yes, my mother typed, as she said, 100 words per minute.
Crazy.
Often in the evenings, she would, while we would, be preparing dinner, she would come home and get on her typewriter. So I'm familiar with the ribbon, the whiteout, all of that. Because as she typed pages, if it was something wrong, she would have a stack and say, okay, put some white out on that, because she would have need to go back and make a correction. She also had all the physician's desk reference, the book. She had the
Mm-hmm.
DSM-4. She had the book. And so we oftentimes, when I would assist her, I was always intrigued about what's in these books. So,
Oh,
I would kind of look through them, thumb through them, and say, oh, kind of giving myself a little vocabulary lesson, independent. So, in other words, I was kind of teaching myself. We would, as she would type through the wee hours of the night, it seems like she would get up very early in the morning, maybe 2 or 3 o'clock, start typing. And as we were getting up to prepare for school, you just wake up, even if she was not typing, it's like you would hear ding, ding, ding. And so when you would get ready and come downstairs, then that's when she would get up and say, okay, I need you to count these lines. It was this little bitty short ruler. She would give me the rule. Make sure that you measuring them and counting them right, because I get paid. And
It's
so,
based on 60 space line.
what was it?
Based on 60 space line.
She said it was based on 60
space line.
six space line. So 60 space
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
So it was just the norm. If I didn't see the paper stacked up there ready as mother, do you have anything that you need counting this morning?
So you grew up reading op notes and
I did.
HPs.
And knowing what all those different reports were. Yeah, I did. And some of those words, it was like, wow, how do you know how to spell this? That's a long word.
And how old were you, Bonita, when you started? If you can
I
remember, like
was,
an age.
yeah, I mean, junior high school. Yeah, it was junior high school, probably the latter part, 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade. I know for sure because the
Well, I
school
got
that
7th and 8th graders sitting downstairs. I'm about to go put them to work. If you're not taking the summer off, we're going to start reading some reports.
well, that was a different day and time. These, now, but yes, I mean, if you implant it, and that's how I'm able to say, it's hereditary. Because even when I began to think about what career I wanted to do, what do you want to do when you get older? And then once I got to that point, it's like I thought that I wanted to do accounting.
Mm.
So I started in computer accounting at National State. And I was like, this is not for me. Even though I'm good with numbers, this is not what I want to do. Did know that I wanted to do something that had to deal with computers, but the accounting part, I don't think that's for me. So I'm going to see if I'm going to just do the office administration with the medical concentration. Because you were able to get different certificates in this office administration with medical concentration at Nashville State Tech. You could get the medical transcriptionist certificate, the medical receptionist certificate, and the medical coding certificate, all up under this Associates of Applied Science degree. And I did get all three of those certificates under the office administration with a medical concentration. That's when I began to say, you know what? I really want to work smart and not hard. I don't want all this intense labor. And I started talking to my mother, and by her working in the transcription, arena in, HIM or medical records at that time, she said, well, some of her colleagues and friends were doing coding. You ought to do coding. They make a lot of money, they work from home, and so, oh, that's interesting and intriguing. Yeah, I think I want to work from home. That's what I want to do. And so that's what got me deeper involved into HIM, because I already had some working knowledge of it. When I got in the transcription class, it was very easy. I knew how to do the dictaphone, the earphones, and now I started off with a tape recorder because I started off with a tape recorder just for the class until I was able to get the equipment so that I could, work on it, do it properly. So that's what really got me interested in HIM. I began. Go
I
ahead.
love that. I'm sorry, Bonita. I just love that you were it just was second nature to you. You already knew how things flowed from a transcription perspective, even if you didn't know the full realm of
Yeah.
medical records operations at the time. You understood transcription, you even understood the by line and being paid that way, which opened your eyes to the possibility of, hey, there are multiple ways to earn. I don't have to earn it in those same ways. But then also, like looking through the PDR, if I remember, aren't the PDRs like this
Hmm.
big? They're
Hmm.
just these huge books that are now, no doubt, you just access them on the computer. But looking at those words, like the Latin origin of a lot of those medical terminology words, and just knowing what those were, like that is amazing for such a young, like
Mm-hmm.
for maybe that's not, because knowledge is so accessible to us now at our fingertips on the computer. But for seventh and eighth graders, when we were seventh and eighth graders, not Seth, he doesn't count in this conversation, he's too young. But when you and I were seventh and eighth graders, um, being able to see like esophagogastroduodenoscopy in a PDR and then knowing what that was, like
And
that's
spelling it.
fascinating. And spelling it, that actually was not that hard to spell. Duodenum was harder for me
Yeah.
to spell, but
No,
I love that.
mm.
What'd your mom say, Bonita?
She said, well, they just say EGD.
They just
That's the
they
easy
just
way to do
had
it.
to know how to spell it and say it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it is, the
yeah. Oh,
terminology.
yes.
I love that it was just this second nature thing to you, and that almost, you said you saw the computer, you wanted to do something in computer and numbers, and I can see already this building into why it was a perfect fit for you to be a health information management professional.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
Yeah, that
plain and simple. This was a natural path for you because of
was
what
natural. Yeah.
you're exposed to. So natural.
yes. Yes, and I mean, the more I began to learn about HIM, because here's the thing, after the wake up was after I finished my associate's degree and I had this medical coding certificate, I thought I was really getting ready to do some coding. And I went to a job fair. I went to a job fair, and I believe it was at Nashville General. And so I was talking to some of the recruiters there, and just, well, how do you get into coding? And, I'm just asking. They were like, oh, do you have a credential? I have a certificate.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Oh, sweetie, you need a credential in order to code. You're not going to be able to. And I was like, what?
Hard.
Yeah. Well, that
Okay.
set you off on a path, right? Set you off
It
on the
did.
education
It
path. And here
did.
you are working on the doctoral degree, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. It did. It sent me on a path. And so when I learned that Tennessee State had a program that was accredited, and I explained that I was interested in coding and all this, and the director was like, "Oh, honey, sweetie, you get your RHIA. All of that is covered, up under the RHIA." And I was like, "Really?" She was like, "Yeah." So that's what got me interested and really involved in starting, because I could then see that there were so many different paths and avenues that you could take, because we were being exposed to people who are already in the profession, what they were doing, things that you would not think HIM professionals would do. I recall having someone do a guest speaker, and literally all they did was get paid $600 an hour for going to court with the record.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, they when they said that, I was like, what?
Sign me
You're
up.
like,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
I was in awe, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the right field. This is the field for me. And so that's what, got me started on the path of HIM. I always said that I wanted to code. I've had a job as, doing medical coding. I love teaching medical coding. That's one of the courses when I got into academia, which I did not, that was not on my path. That was not on my radar at all. It just kind of fell into my lap when I was looking on career builders, and I put that I had my RHIA, and a professor from National College immediately called me. And at that time, I was just working like a patient accounts representative for St. Thomas. And they were about to undergo their merger. So I'm able to see and apply a lot of things that I learned in the classroom. I was able to see like right there, like how companies come in and they, merge and they're buying them out. And then a lot of the employees may lose their job, they'll start rehire. So I was able to see all of that. But once I put that, I had my RHIA out there, this lady called me, and her name was Carmen Bellos, and she says, "Oh, we gotta have you. You can't find many people with the RHIA that's willing to teach." And I told her I have never taught, although I did do tutoring in class because a lot of people would have problems with coding, and I enjoyed helping. I said, I've done that, and that's all I've done. She was like, "Oh, it does not matter. Come on, you can shout on me." I would, because it was an accredited program, and they had to have somebody with the credentials. And I was willing. I was willing to learn. Began teaching there, as full-time faculty, and because it was a proprietary institution, the credit hours are kind of different because they on 10-week, they do terms.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to learn a lot, but then she says, "You know what? I'm going to do something else." And because at first she wanted me to be her assistant director, but then she decided she was going to do something else. And so the campus director called me. It was like, "This is urgent."
Surprise.
Yeah. "I need for you to do this." And it was like, how long can I think about it? You have until Tuesday. It was like 2 days. So I accepted. And then I began to fall in love with teaching at a proprietary institution. It is hard just because of the terms. And then they offer day and night classes to try to, cater to the community in which they serve. And so then after that, I just kind of was like, I just want to do coding, because at the same time that I accepted the director's position of that program, I had also applied to do coding with Optum. And they called me like a week after I started, and I had to say, "I'm sorry."
Well, it's good to be wanted.
It is. But the funny thing about it is, 2 years after I worked as a director, I was getting on the burnout side because I was working day and night.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard to find credentialed people to teach. And so I said, "Okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm working on my master's, and this is too much. I've already done half of my master's. I just need to focus because I got to do my thesis." And I went back out to Optum. They had a job, they ran a job announcement. And so I put in for it, and they called me to come out there to the interview. And I went to the interview, and the guy was sitting there like, "Why does your name sound familiar? Why does your name sound familiar?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." And then he said, "Have you ever worked here before?" I said, "No, but I applied, like 2 years ago." He was like, "Oh, wow. You know what? That's weird. We had hired you. We had made your name tag. You were a supervisor."
Oh, wow.
Goodness. Wow.
And when we had to replace you because you already taken the job, the lady had to wear your name tag for like. I was like, "Are you serious?" He was like, "Yeah." And then throughout the time that I was teaching in National College, I happened to run into this lady. It was very funny because she was like,
"It's a small community."
"It is a small community." She was like, "It is so nice to finally meet you because your name is on the back of my name tag." And she said it was a running joke that they would say Bonita Payne, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Are you serious?" She was like, "Yes." So at that time, I did accept because I accept the medical coding position because I wanted an opportunity to do some coding. I always
Mm-hmm.
say, I want to learn from the ground up because I want to know a little bit about everything. And I'm the kind of person that has to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
If I'm going to talk the talk, I'm walking the walk.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you
so,
had a good role model in Miss Payne of teaching you how to
yes.
do that, how to work day and night, how to count those lines, how to go make the money. So, it's something that's interesting because we have a lot of schools that have their students listen to our podcast, and something we tell folks is it's a journey, and you
Hmm.
got to go take the first job. You've got to go
Hmm.
figure out from the bottom up. You're not going to just start out as the head honcho and whatever you're wanting to do. you
Hmm.
gotta you gotta start somewhere and learn how it works, and that provides more value than a
Absolutely.
lot. That
That is,
OJT, that on
yes.
the job training, was always the best.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's what I had on the job training. I had
Yeah. And
on the job training and all the while I was in school. And so when I graduated, I just remained at Vanderbilt because I didn't like my student teaching when I went and I had all those kids. I didn't have a cooperating teacher because she got sick. And then she
oh,
told the principal that I was able to do the teaching all
oh,
by myself.
yes.
So I
Yeah.
had all them students. It was at Madison High School. And so when my student teaching was over and I didn't even apply for a teaching position, I just remained at Vanderbilt as a transcriptionist because I loved it. And you just sit down and listen, what they tell you, just type it. And even one time I had a doctor to come in the area where we were, the transcriptions were, and he dictated to me orally and I typed it
Wow.
out.
That's amazing. I want
Mhm.
to ask you, Mrs. Payne, since you've gone on from your medical transcription career and, left Vanderbilt, does Bonita keep you up to date with what's going on in the world of transcription and the technology advancements?
Not actually, because she's too busy doing everything that she has to do.
She's
And
in a lot.
yeah, she's in so much. So the last time I think when my career ended at Vanderbilt, I was able to do some work for a Rolling Hills Hospital. And I worked there from 2001 to 2011.
Okay.
At
Wow.
Rolling Hills as a transcriptionist, but it was just a small hospital, and so I was the only one to do the transcription there. And then when that ended, I think I did it from home for a company out of Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and that was with it was on the internet, and then you just listen. I mean, to what? No, you really had to make the correction because it was printed out for you. So you have to go and make the correction. So that was my last experience with the transcription industry. So I just
Even
Yep.
gave it.
just just listening to your advancement, the technology was changing your whole
Hmm.
career. And
Hmm.
now it's so different because we have things like medical scribes and we have ambient listening and things like that. And I think we're going to try to talk about that on a future episode. But it's changed so much. Now it is not a by line, you know, product of work. It is a listening, and the computers, devices are doing a lot of the work. And so it's transitioned from where you were, and you were on the cutting edge. Like when you were
Hmm.
doing the work, you were on the front of what transcription was at the time. And so I think that's fascinating. I wanted to ask Bonita, though, Bonita, what kind of impact has your mom made on your career and just your journey in general?
Well, the fact just seeing her work hard all the time, but not just the working hard part, being fluent in multiple things, and having some diversity.
That's
I think that was impressed upon me at a very early age, and I've been able to just carry that into everything that I do, um, without, it's not forced. It's just natural. It just comes out natural.
Mm.
So, just seeing her, go through the process, making sure, because I remember when she was talking about CEs, like, I got to go to this conference, got to get these continuing education, it's like, okay. So, I mean, I knew about that then, and I knew that she was getting more information, and that was keeping her at the forefront of what she was doing in her career at the time. And I do occasionally, try to keep her up to speed. Like, I'm like, Mom, they're edited now. Well, the editors now, they don't use this and they don't use that. But, she just kind of, well, when I was doing it, X, Y, and Z. So we, have those conversations, and we also talk about how the medical records department is now the HIM department, and
Changing rapidly.
but the thing that really intrigued me the most is, even back then, it wasn't called remote, but she was working from
Yeah.
home. So I mean, yeah. So in this field, this is not new. This has been something that has been going on. They have given it a different name, and it's just become uh, more accessible to people,
Mm-hmm.
and more people are buying into it now. Not, COVID helped it a little bit, but HIM was at the forefront with it prior to COVID
That's
occurring.
right.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
friends at DocuVoice, Bob and Terry, they kind of started remote coding, at least in Tennessee, many years ago. Gosh, this was probably in the 70s or 80s. I'm not exactly, I can't remember. It was probably in the 80s, but they had remote coding opportunities because they were having a hard time getting the coding resources for some of their clients. And so, and they were transcription, right? They were linear first. So they were transcription, moved into coding. And then, so it is true. HIM has always been, um, part of our roles have always been able to be done remotely. The interesting thing I see I'm so glad you brought that up, because what I see now is, because we have electronic medical records, and
Hmm.
while we still have some paper, the bulk of things are electronic. Um, Even doing chart review and completion and flagging for signatures and things can be done remotely. Really, the
Hmm.
only
Mm-hmm.
thing that's not done remotely, or maybe isn't currently able to be fully remotely, is release of information. I can't think of anything else we can't do remotely. Can you all?
Mm-mm.
That's pretty much it. So,
Yeah,
Hmm.
a
but
walk up for release of information
Or
is
release.
basically all that can't be done, in
yeah,
terms of the functions and operations themselves.
yeah. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. And Bonita, you and I've known each other for a long time. It's great to meet your mother, Miss Payne.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast. It was just wonderful to hear your story and to learn about your career. Definitely appreciate you guys joining. And Shannan, until next time, my friend.
I'll see you next time, buddy.